Mark, what are you doing? Ladies and gentlemen, things are falling apart very quickly on Mark Carney. In fact, his government's crumbling. When we talk about the MOU that went through, when we talk, or not even what that went through, that was promised to Alberta, and the circus that's kind of flowing around it, you'll know if you joined me on yesterday's video, we talked about how Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives were essentially forcing a vote onto the Liberals to vote in favor or vote against the pipeline that has been proposed to go through Alberta to the BC coast at Fort Kitimat. Now, the reason we got to talk about these things today is that the vote will be happening, and I know this video is coming out before the vote happens, but a lot of trickery, a lot of shenanigans going on to really unveil the hypocrisy of this government. You know, they say one thing, they do another. We all know and knew from day one that this MOU was nothing more than a cash grab to get 600% carbon increases for the next 20 years out of Albertans. Thank God there is no contract, and thank God that, again, as Danielle Smith stated, at any time Alberta can pull out and withdraw from this. So it'll be interesting to see what Danielle Smith's next moves are. I very quickly tweeted her out this morning to say, hey, do you still think Canada can work? Because sure doesn't look like it to me. What you're going to see, and what I'm going to show you here, is the Liberals trying to play a little bit of, hey, just trust me, bro. Stick behind me. You know, we're going to build a pipeline. We care about pipelines. We just don't want to upset the Indigenous. When you look at digital ID, and I know it's a little off track, but try and see the pattern here. When we talk about digital ID in the UK, it went from mass immigration to censoring your words, which, our government is in the process of doing right now, to all of a sudden, hey, all this mass immigration has caused us security concerns, everything else. Everybody needs digital ID, and you can't complain about it because it's illegal and it's mandatory for you to have a job. The government now knows everything you're doing at all times. Well, what you're seeing here is just like they're blaming mass immigration for the digital ID, the Liberals are scrambling to blame this entire pipeline on Indigenous peoples, First Nations peoples, saying, well, essentially, this is up to them. We can't infringe on their rights. We can't tell them that they're not, they don't have a say at the table. Well, if my question is if we're telling First Nations people that they have the ultimate say, why would Mark Carney sign a promissory note to build a pipeline if he didn't have their permission? Well, that seems a little odd. But what you're going to see here is Calgary, one of the very few Liberal MPs in Alberta, Corey Hogan, accusing Pierre Poilievre of playing games that, quote, put at risk the very thing Pierre Poilievre purports to want, which is a pipeline. The excuses here and what he tries to put forward are you're damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Really shows the hypocrisy of the Liberals, and it also shows how stupid they think we are. Take a listen.
Mr. Hogan, was this a whip vote? Would you have wanted to vote in favor of the pipeline? Was this a whip vote for your caucus?
This was not a whipped vote for me. This is a very easy decision to vote no on. It is designed to divide. In fact, it's a very frustrating motion for anybody who wants to see a pipeline built, such as myself, because it's designed to be a trap for the Liberals, but it's at the expense of the country, and it's at the expense of our national economy.
Wait a minute. It's a trap for the Liberals? No, this was a trap for Albertans. This was, give us more tax dollars for industrial carbon taxes. Basically bend over backwards for us so that we fill our pockets and you suffer and can't get any investment and can't have a suitable future. Why is it every time the government has a problem with something, it's always, oh, we're so innocent, we just really care about everybody else. Oh, these greedy politicians telling us not to care about the rest of the world.
If we vote yes, as we've already heard and as we've discussed, and the reason why we're voting no, it looks like we are undermining the rights of Indigenous peoples. It looks like we're undermining conversations with BC. It looks like we are ignoring the rest of the major environmental actions that are part of this MOU. And if we vote no, well, it's designed to look like we don't support the pipeline, and we do support the pipeline. The pipeline is in the MOU. We support the entire MOU. And this game playing is ridiculous. This game playing puts at risk the very thing that Pierre Poilievre purports to want, which is a pipeline. If he was thinking about this in terms of how do we actually get a pipeline built, he would never have brought forward this motion.
I'm going to press X to doubt on that one, Chief. What he's essentially saying here, well, if Pierre Poilievre knew what was beneficial to the government, he'd just allow us to keep collecting taxes. He'd allow us to keep gouging Alberta with the promise of a pipeline and never actually doing anything. Now, the Liberals will be voting against this bill. I'm going to get into that. I'm definitely going to get into that. But what we first have to talk about is Mark Carney. Breaking, the Ethics Commissioner has confirmed that Mark Carney's future earnings rely on the success of Brookfield Corporation. This is coming out from Blacklock's reporter. Big shock, ladies and gentlemen, that Mark Carney's in bed with Brookfield in order to make his profits. We had a video last week showing Conservative MPs standing up in the House of Commons saying, if you think that this guy left making millions of dollars with Brookfield to selflessly be the Prime Minister on a $400,000 salary just because he wanted the best trade deals for Canada, think again. I mean, that's the easiest way to put it out in an argument for anybody who says, oh, Mark Carney's such a great Prime Minister. He really cares about his elbows. It says here, this is a massive blow to Carney's claim that he would no longer have an interest in the company. Why doesn't he just come clean with Canadians? And of course, down here you have Blacklock's reporter showing Prime Minister Mark Carney's future earnings rely on the success of Brookfield Corporation, the ethics commissioner said yesterday. Opposition MPs seek to compel Carney to sell his stock portfolio. That'll never happen. It is clear Mr. Carney's future compensation is tied to the success of Brookfield. Now, we already had Northern Perspective come out with a very extensive video about C-15 and how Mark Carney essentially wants to find immunity to those who have conflicts of interest. Again, David over at Moose on the Loose has a fantastic chart showing all of Mark Carney's conflicts of interest within Canada. But this is why the MOU can't go through. Because the MOU is tied to Brookfield. It's tied to a lot of his companies in terms of the industrial carbon tax, his green energy plans. I've always said if you ever read Mark Carney's book, Values, excuse me, Values very clearly shows you the blueprint for Mark Carney's tenure as Prime Minister. And while I would never recommend anybody purchase Mark's book or give him any more money, you can readily find it online in text-rich format or in libraries, but I definitely would recommend it as a read, not because Mark Carney's interesting, but because it tells you where the country is headed moving forward. Now, while he's doing those things, I want to remind everybody that Donald Trump is also threatening severe tariffs on Canadian fertilizer in an attempt to aid U.S. farmers. So another deal Mark Carney is going to lose. The tariffs are going to keep coming, and I, for one, have said, I hope he raises them 400%. I hope that he completely obliterates Mark Carney just to show the stupidity of our leadership. U.S. President Donald Trump says Canadian fertilizer being exported south of the border could be hit with significant levies, in the future of his administration, as lays out plans to help American farmers who have been impacted for months of trade uncertainty. Trump's comments came at a roundtable in Washington on Monday after he announced $12 billion in agriculture aid package. He was asked by reporters what his administration's plan is to help bolster domestic production of fertilizer, much of which is currently imported from Canada. Donald Trump comes in to say, a lot of it does come from Canada, and so we'll end up putting very severe tariffs on that if we have to, because that's the way you bolster it here, and we can do it here. We can build more products here, says Trump. We do a lot of cars here. What was it he said the other day? They are really good at ice hockey, okay? Trump's renewed focus on agriculture comes as many U.S. farmers struggle to sell their crops or plan for the future amid an ongoing trade war with China, as well as continued trade uncertainty with U.S. allies, including Canada. So, rightfully so, Canada should get struck with these tariffs. Mark Carney should get struck with those tariffs. But let's get to the real meat and potatoes of what's happening today. More hypocrisy. This is how you know Canada's falling apart. That while these trade deals are going on, these talks of trades, are going on. Well, things are getting even worse in Canada as the Carney government is going to vote against the Conservative motion on pipeline support. So again, this is a huge wake-up call for Premier Danielle Smith that keeps talking about, I want to make a united Canada within a sovereign Alberta and yada, yada, yada. Canada's going to work. No, it's not. No, it's not. Mark Carney came and gave you a piece of toilet paper that said he wanted to build pipelines with Alberta and unlock its economic potential. Remember his major projects office that was going to accelerate projects and make Canada an economic powerhouse? Well, nobody's in that office. Rebel News visited those offices and showed there's nobody there. There is no office. In fact, it's one person getting, I believe it's somewhere around $700,000 a year. Liberal government will vote against a Conservative motion on Tuesday that calls for the federal government to support a bitumen pipeline. A senior government source tells CTV News the opposition motion, which is non-binding, explicitly calls for the support of one or more pipelines, enabling the export of at least 1 million barrels a day of low-emission Alberta bitumen from a strategic deep-water port on the British Columbia coast to Asia markets, and for the adjustment to the Oil Tanker Moratorium Act while respecting the duty to consult Indigenous peoples. What you're seeing here is not an effective motion. This isn't a motion that actually pushes for any laws. The reason this is so amazing is because what Pierre's doing is showing in real time, hey, this is all bullshit. It's all theater. There is no plan to work with Alberta. There is no pipeline that is going to be done with Alberta. People who think Danielle Smith signed on to this just because, she's not stupid. She knows this guy is a jagoff. She knows that he's not going to do anything. She's not stupid. Again, her actions are going to be, her response to this is going to be detrimental to her future as Premier of Alberta. But it's going to be very interesting to see what she has to say on this because, of course, Mark Carney, who's been saying, we want to work with Alberta. We're going to build a pipeline with Alberta. We're going to do all these wonderful things. David Eby doesn't have jurisdiction. It's the federal government. And then when he's told, hey, back that up with putting it in writing, well, Mark says, nah, I don't want to do that. I want to do anything that actually holds me accountable to this. According to a source, the motion ignores critical elements of the MOU, such as industrial carbon pricing, co-ownership opportunities for Indigenous people, and engagement with British Columbia. As a result, the federal government will vote against it. Well, what you see here is their key thing to argue is industrial carbon pricing. Again, their government was set to take 600% increase over the next 20 years from Alberta to line their pockets, to give them a green slush fund, to work along companies like Brookfield, to make them rich. Mark Carney wanted Danielle Smith to follow through with that agreement, saying, hey, trust me, Danielle, we're going to put a pipeline in. We're going to do all these wonderful things for you. All you got to do is pay this tax, and I'm going to make sure it gets fast-tracked. I'm going to make sure it gets done. No, it won't. No, it won't. And I think, again, Danielle Smith knew this. I'm going to be very curious again to see what she has to say. Let me know what you guys have to say in the comments. Are you shocked that Mark Carney isn't going to vote for the very MOU, the very deal that he put through that pissed off many Albertans, in fact, angered a lot of people within his party as well? If you look at the writing on the wall here, folks, this does one of two things. Either Mark Carney was going to vote in favor of the pipeline to try and make sure his interests were padded with Alberta in terms of his industrial carbon tax, while generating anger and hostility from his Liberal Party and his cabinet, or he's going to do what he does today, which is vote against it, in which sense it just makes him look like a hypocrite and a charlatan and really exposes this MOU for what it is, a bunch of nonsense. Alberta's going to move forward with what they're doing now. And again, I don't expect Danielle Smith to come out and cheer for Alberta separation at any point soon. But I do think that what Danielle's going to do is get a little wiser to start saying, hey, look, I did the best I could. I did what I had to. Mark Carney doesn't want to work with us. I've tried. She threatened Mark Carney 7-8 months ago that if you don't find a way to work with Albertans, you're going to find yourself faced with a national unity crisis. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, Mark, but you have a national unity crisis on your hands. And if we go to the polls, the Conservatives are going to be fighting like hell, because if Alberta does, in fact, vote in favor of its independence, well, that cripples the Conservative Party of Canada. So the Conservatives have a very large hand to play in this, that they don't want their party to dissolve into nothing. Going to be real interesting to see where things move forward on Parliament Hill. Again, let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. If it's your first time here, I hope this video's earned your subscription. Make sure as you hit that button, you join me live on the channel every Wednesday and Friday for Unhinged Fringe on Wednesdays, Friday Night Fringe on Fridays, as I'm joined by the beautiful Mrs. Fringe on Fridays, my new co-host Matt on Wednesdays, as we talk about everything that happened this week in politics, everything we know coming up in the weeks ahead, as well as Q&A within the greatest YouTube community on the platform. I look forward to chatting with you guys outside of making these videos. I most importantly look forward to chatting with you this week, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, every Wednesday and Friday here on the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.